we decided to take the chairs here and do this presentation as a duo, just because we want to encourage that audience participation, and I'm sort of the guinea pig audience in Minna's presentation today. So, yes, sit down. Let's sit down and so forth. So, hi, as Lassi said, I'm Ulla Jones from DNA, which is a local telco company here in Finland. We do service design, we do machine learning, and we wanted to sponsor today's event because we want to, in our organization, bring those two things together, but also sponsor that sort of thinking where data and design meet. But no one really is interested in hearing sort of a sponsor speeches, so that's why I decided to invite Minna Mustakallio on stage. Minna is a good friend of mine. We met a few years ago when she was working as a strategic designer at a local tech company, tech and design company. But she's one of those people who've done a lot over the years. She gets around. She's done design for a few decades already in Finland and in some other interesting places. And it has been an interesting journey to follow her from strategic design and taking over more of an interest in AI and data ethics. And recently she did a stint in a startup that was focused on those things solely. And now she's here sort of open the day. And what we agreed with Minna is that she's going to give us some lenses on the day, how to sort of view this topic. And I'm here sort of maybe pose some questions that we're all thinking, and you might not want to interrupt us to ask, but also feel free to do so anyway, and I'll just channel them for Minna.
Okay,
so welcome, Ulla. Minna.
Thank you so much for asking me. I was first like, oh my goodness. I'm at the moment kind of in between jobs in that sense that I want to really, I've been very much like investigating about ethics and data lately from many different angles, and also worked obviously kind of like towards a product that handles some of the aspects of that. And it was really super nice to start with these lenses. We don't have much time, so just to kind of, prepare you, it's like, what I do is that I will put up some basically claims about that I believe in. And those are meant for you. They might be quite provocative. Some of you might be not agreeing with them. Some would maybe agree, but then like, what is this all about? So the idea is that there's something in the back of your head kind of after this that you can also use as a critical lens to the rest of the presentations today. So that's the meaning of this, and it's going to be quite a small amount of time per basically a kind of statement. So if you want to go deeper, you have to then kind of like maybe come to talk to me after, or just kind of find more information.
Sure. All right.
So let's start with the kind of like something that needs to kind of come first.
Yeah. The screen here isn't working, so that's why we're sort of cheating a little bit and checking there like what slide we're on. So.
Yep. So, okay, let's get to the business because we don't have much time. So, first of all, data-driven, sorry. My opinion is that it's the worst idea ever. It's something, and of course I know that it rhymes nice. It's like data-driven, D and so on. But it's actually, words have meaning. And saying something that data-driven is, in my opinion, a bit dangerous. And really not a good idea. And we get into why after a while. So kind of data as a driver is kind of surrendering a little bit our purposefulness, many decisions, and kind of holistic context understanding to optimization algorithms fed by incomplete, distorted data. So I wouldn't say that we want to say that data drives. I think we need to think about what drives the data usage. And that means data doesn't drive, we make the decisions, we decide why we are doing these things. So kind of, if I think about like how I currently see it, most data-driven things is kind of like, we use data and algorithms to optimize the hell out of the world, which is in a way interesting, but not maybe really. And we get to that also kind of after a while. So yeah, that's kind of, this is cat out of the bag. It's like, can we please, instead of data-driven, be data-informed? Data is important, it's useful, it's helpful, but it should not drive.
Yeah, Minna was asking me, can I say this out loud? And I said, sure you can, because, while we love sort of, as designers, we like to sort of solid 4Ds, but at the same time, we wanted to sort of open up a little bit of the term and what it means for us.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, you can disagree, you can agree, but I would be delighted if we could kind of get rid of this and start to talk about data informed. That would be great. Okay, and the clicker is maybe working. Yes. Okay, first statement, real statement. So data is not truth, and data is not answer. What do you think I mean by that?
Well, what do I think that you mean by data is not a truth?
Yes.
Well, I find that data is also, a reflection of how we collect it, and also how we perceive it, and so it's also as much about what is collected and where the information comes from, as much as what are the lenses that we perceive it through. But please elaborate more.
No, absolutely, and that's why I wanted to ask you, because it's not just me preaching about these things, and that is true. Most of the data is very actually all data is subjective. Even let's say data that is collected with sensors has some, in the background a human has decided what do we use the sensors for, what are the certain thresholds and so on. So it's always subjective in a way or another. Of course, there's like, the scale is kind of like from very little subjectivity to like totally subjective. So, but yeah, you're totally right. And I think this sounds so dull, but data really is imperfect approximation of some aspect of the world at certain time and place. And that's all it is. It's not truth. The truth is somewhere out there, but it's not in the data. It's not definitely truth. It's not answer. It can help us. It's kind of like, it reflects certain things about world, and especially about people. And we really need to think about is if our data is fit for purpose. So every time you do anything with data, you should be very carefully going into the data and thinking, why am I using this data? What kind of data this is? What does it really tell me? And is it inclusive? Is the quality of the data good? Does it have gaps? Does it exclude people? Does it exclude phenomena? So that's kind of like, happens so easily, and I've been in these projects where you really want to jump into this, like, hey, let's have an algorithm to massage this data, and you just don't do the groundwork to go into the data and really decide what this data is actually good for. Or even better, just throw away your idea of like, what data you have and think like, if I have a question, what data would actually serve to me to get the answers. So yes, it's kind of idealistic, but at the moment, I think what we're doing very much is rushing into just kind of, yay, we have data, let's do something with it.
So what's data then useful for? If it's just a tool, you'll probably go for it in the next slide.
Yeah, I actually kind of get into that, because it's not like, this is like, it's not truth, don't use it. No, please use it. So maybe just a couple of things before we go to the next one is that quite often people come, and especially when you work with clients who are very much kind of saying that, we need to be kind of, data-driven or even data-informed, which is good. They are like, what does the data say? Data never says anything. Data can't talk, can't think, can't do anything. You are the one who's always interpreting the data. So it's more like, what do you say about this data? Data alone doesn't say anything, and it misleads you very easily if you think that way. And also when you're using the data, not only, and these things are kind of like obvious, but not so obvious when you actually start to dig into them. And then quite often one thing that we forget is, what is the price of the data we are using? It's like, yes, it might be good, it might be that it helps us with something. What's the price? Is it somebody's privacy? Is it getting into surveillance mode? Is it the quality? Is it the money? Sometimes good data is costly. Is it energy that we are using to crunch all that big data? Is it worth it? And I kind of think that we very seldom ask this question nowadays.
Very true. I very seldom hear those questions being asked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is really that way. So kind of like start with the questions and then go into the data. So, okay, now the nicer part is like, it's not truth, it's not answers, it's way more interesting. It's so much more interesting. There's so much more in the data. The idea is that you approach data with humbleness. I'm not raising these things to just kind of depress you. It's kind of, or discourage you, but to make you humble about like the reasons why you use the data and what kind of data do you use and how you use it.
Yeah, when we were talking about this topic and Minna went to all this gloom and doom of what data is not useful for and what you need to be aware of when you're using of whatever data source and so forth. Like, well, Minna, could you also sort of lighten up the mode a little bit and tell why you then work in this field and why you would be interested in sharing and why are you so interested in it?
I think that, first of all, the usefulness of data doesn't come from it being perfect or complete, but kind of from the fact that it has limitations and we need to recognize those limitations. So you go in, you think, what can I use the data for? And what is kind of like why it's still useful is that you can discover things from data, and obviously it can give you insights, and it can actually kind of in many cases be, if you just make sure the quality and fit for the purpose, it can make things more efficient. But I myself, the angle that I'm having is that you can uncover things with the data. You can learn from the data. You can understand things better with data if you just do it right. So it's super nice. So maybe the questions you have is like, don't ask what does it say, but ask who, as you actually just said, who collected it, how they did it, how did these decisions affect the results, what is missing from the picture, what is another way to consider what actually happened based on that data, and that kind of thing. So there's like this kind of beautiful metaphor of like dinosaur bones. And if you have the dinosaur bones, you can probably construct like bazillion different dinosaurs from those bones, which none of them is probably true if you just go and take the raw data. You need much more. You need more angles into it. So.
And in a way, the same metaphor for that. I mean, we know over the years how many different dinosaur combinations they've sort of tried to create because they weren't sure which bones belong together.
Exactly.
So be sort of lenient and sort of allowing for us also to be learning through this process of being data-led.
Yeah, and as I said, I think this kind of like humbleness in approaching these things and also kind of usage of data is something that we should consider. Okay, this is the next one. Prediction is not future. So, and this is more about maybe like how do we use the data? Well, data is kind of the source of it all. So even if we slam an algorithm in it, then everything, or let's say like 90% of time, it's the data that is like by far most important thing. The algorithm is kind of secondary in that sense. And I guess my point here is that, if we can't at the moment forecast weather like super accurately. I mean, yesterday, for example, I went out and it was supposed to be sunny and it was raining. So if we are still there, why do we think that we can forecast human behavior well, even using big data? I think there's this kind of like fundamental some kind of hubris at the moment, kind of probably because Google's and big data and blah, 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 and because it's so efficient in advertising and stuff that we actually think that we can say that this is how people will do things. Yeah. So that's one thing. And kind of like predictive algorithms, even assuming lots of good data, validated data, quality data, inclusive data, everything, they still give us only, it's kind of like if all things stay the same, if history kind of repeats itself kind of view, which is helpful. It's like, okay, this is how people have been behaving this far. And it's really helpful in discovering patterns and correlations. But we are the ones deciding how we want to use these answers we are getting, these forecasts we are getting.
I'm loving that you raised this point, because it's sort of like, I find that there's almost a pitfall that at least I, as a designer, sometimes just sort of a fall, is that we know, I mean, and this is what, as an in-house designer, I've been sort of preaching in a company, it's like, you can't, just see the future and tell, innovate based on your sort of existing market information and sales data and so forth. But while we were talking about this, I realized that I had somehow sort of created in my mind sort of a good data and sort of a bad data categories, where I had completely sort of forgotten that, yes, actually, with good data, the conditions are exactly the same. Whatever we have numbers of, that means that has happened. And we can only sort of look in the rear mirror. And I just sort of, I'm maybe sort of revealing my own sort of lack of knowledge in this, but I just sort of wanted to raise this point, is that all data have that sort of a similar quality, and where we sometimes try to think that, okay, so when they make these sort of decisions, then it's bad, but with these decisions, that data is good. So thanks for bringing this up.
Yeah, absolutely. Good data is also historical data, and you get answers if you ask the right questions and you have the right data, but you should be really thinking what do you want to do with the answers. So I mean, this takes a bit of time, but I think it's just so important point that I want to emphasize it. So in I can't remember the exact kind of city in US, but they have a system there that is predicting if kind of like basically if people are appearing to the court hearing kind of after the initial hearing. So the system is there that you have initial hearing, then you either get a bail or then you are put into prison to wait until there's the actual kind of court day.
Yeah.
And so they have a system, and let's just assume that the system is good and it works fine and it is inclusive and the data is good and it can actually predict with reasonable accuracy if certain person is gonna appear in the court, or if they are actually not gonna come and somebody needs to go and kind of restrict them again. So if that works fine, and you just use the answers as is, then you probably say that, if there's like, a 0.5 risk, then this person goes and, we can't release them, they can't go home, they can't mind their own business afterwards and just come to court, but we actually put them to jail to wait. And of course, I mean, if you think about the short run and just optimization, you probably want to do that. But if you think like, we have this answer, I wonder why these people will not appear in the real court dates. Would there be maybe correlation, as there was, with like if they have children or not? Well, wonder might be that actually people don't come to court because they can't come because they don't have somebody looking after their children. Or maybe they don't come to court because they can't be away from the work that they just got like with like lousy salary, but they will get fired if they go. So asking that question and thinking about how to actually kind of change the whole setting is something I would urge people to do much more.
So you can still be very narrow-minded if you just look at the data as it is.
Yeah, you can be mechanistic, or you can really start to ask why. And I think, everybody should, but especially designers should be quite specialized of asking this why.
Yeah.
Okay, we possibly get this working. Next one. Okay, so as a conclusion, when you design, when you do things, when you work with data, it's great for discovery. Use it as a mirror or distorted mirror, not a crystal ball. And try not to design self-fulfilling prophecies and ask why multiple times. Always ask why. And otherwise you might try to go forward with kind of just looking at the back mirror. Just many times the case. So yep. Next one. My favorite. What do you think about this one?
Data is not same as tech. And again, one of those pitfalls that one sort of falls is so often is that thinking that only the kind of data, for example, that technology allows us to collect is somehow valuable, for example. That comes to mind as someone who's a big advocate for qualitative design, research, for example.
Yeah. And not only that, it's like I'm always kind of my blood pressure goes up with this one. So if you think about data, it really doesn't belong to tech. I mean, come on, data has been in its most versatile use in social sciences, from all the sciences. Data has been there forever, before computers. I mean, we have been using statistics, qualitative analysis, quantitative analysis. Data has always been there, and it's not some kind of property of tech, which it, sorry to say, kind of feels to me when I work with tech, and I've been working with tech like last 20 years. It's somehow like people think it's like, okay, it's computerized, then it's data. Data is not just ones and zeros. So no, it doesn't belong to tech. And computers are actually not that great at handling many aspects of data. They're good at handling these zeros and ones, that's fine. But then they absolutely suck kind of in dealing with context and abstract concepts, that you need to kind of get something out from the data. So no, we are not going to replace people with machines in interpreting data. Actually, I think we are going to need hordes and hordes of more people who understand how to, as humans, deal with the data in the future. And while I'm at it, design, by the way, is not the thing you use to kind of just add human element. Okay, we have human data, let's add designer to do the work. Oh, poor designer. I mean, you know, yes, I'm a designer. I'm not the social psychologist. I'm not sociologist. I'm not anthropologist. We need more people and more views from disciplines who deal with, for example, if we think about human data especially, who deal with this human data. And of course, if it's data about something else, we need domain experts maybe. So if it's kind of about solar power, maybe not humans. But
yeah, I'm holding my tongue because I know what you're going to click next.
Yep.
And I want to ask a question exactly regarding that. So perhaps can we go to the next one? Is that the coffee picture? Are we there yet?
No, it's the people picture.
Yes, right.
So when you say it, let's go into it. So as I said, if we're dealing with data, we need to widen our perspective to cover different aspects of the data. And again, of course, if you have a machine you want to optimize, it's less important, like, of course, duh. But then in most of the cases I've been involved with, there's either data about humans or data which use impacts humans. And in both cases, you need people who understand humans, who really kind of concentrate on that. So just to recap, ask why a lot, ask it together, kind of from different angles, from different disciplines, a lot. Use diverse methods. You can use automation, but it also automatic collection. You can use questions. You can do randomized experiments. You can use qualitative data, but use them because those are the ones which should be used, not because you have one data scientist who you want to give all the work. It doesn't work that way. Or it works, but it's shitty. So yeah, if we want to tackle this one, my super favorite, we need to get real with multidisciplinary. I mean, actually real.
This is the thing I was waiting for, because I knew that it was coming, and you were just talking about inclusivity when it came to social scientists, psychologists, and so forth. And my question was, because I'm sort of I'm looking forward you sort of explaining this one and asking is like is that what sort of integration also means, that you have all these different disciplines looking at the data together with a designer and a data scientist and so forth?
I think diversity versus integration is actually a big thing, because I mean everybody is talking about diversity at the moment, and it's a good start. But diversity doesn't do any good if you don't have integration. So if you just because we have to now hurry a bit, I'm just gonna make it really just kind of simple example. It's like, first of all, to even invite other kinds of disciplines in, everybody needs to understand why and actually respect the contribution people are giving. So it's not like, hey, let's have this token social scientist or token designer even sometimes in the project so that, they can come with their views. That's kind of not how it works. So in simplified way, you have to, and we, and I think I'm with we, as a tech and digital industry and teams and clients and consultants, we have to not only invite new folks into our realm to help us, but we also have to let the people who we ask to come into our teams to help us to change how we work. If we just invite them in and say that, hey, let's have this agile process and let's have lean and let's do everything like we have been doing, you can take part. That's bullshit. Nobody wants to take part. They go home. So if we want to actually use disciplines that are different from the ones that we are now using in this industry, we need to let them change us and how we work.
Yeah, that was heavy. That was a little bit of a rant right there.
Yeah, I know, but I'm passionate about this.
No, and I recognize that sort of point of Tina Fey in her interview with David Letterman talks about her time as a writer in Saturday Night Live, and she was talking about how the jokes were a certain type and kind until they brought different kind of writers in. And that, I suppose, to me, that sort of is a clear analogy of it, that, if you're working this way, you get this sort of results. But if you're sort of expanding it and making it more diverse, you get a broader sort of understanding of the topics.
Yeah, and this is just really, really important to do. And this is a super big challenge for us all, because we kind of, even if we are women, we kind of, I feel that we are in this kind of tech bro kind of industry, and that needs to stop.
Ladies, 1 more minute. I'll let you choose how you spend it.
We probably used to. This is just kind of a way to ask common questions and to kind of start to have a common language about like what are the things that the team together needs to ask with enough overlap and also enough specialization. And I still have 2 slides, and I'm gonna go over, because this is one. This is when we are saying data informed. That's fine. That's good. That's dandy, and I think everybody understands it. Like, of course, like let's not be data driven. Let's be data informed. It's just language, but then again, it's important because that's how we convey their meanings. But then with the whole what should drive us. I used to say purpose driven, by the way. Why do you think I don't say purpose driven anymore?
I think with your thinking, you're somewhere more sort of a broader and holistic point by now.
Yeah, and because purpose is a great thing. You need to have purpose. You need to have this kind of like, this is what I'm here to do. As a team, you have to share the purpose. But if you just go for the purpose, you easily forget the consequences. So actually, you should be more interested about the consequences than the actual purpose. And this is where it gets really interesting. And this is how we should be working, because there's lots of consequences of our work that are actually not something we want, something that anyone wants, or maybe somebody who just gets the money wants. So yes, we should be consequences driven.
Yeah,
it's lower.
And I love the final slide that you're going to show, which is sort of like she insists on no longer she speaks anywhere without sharing this slide. So can you click it there so that we can sort of get the point? So
one quote before that: there are no side effects, just effects. Okay, it doesn't want to come. Here we go. Okay, yeah, I promised to myself I never ever again have any presentation without going into this, and people are like, oh my God, somebody's coming with this idealistic view of like changing the world. Fucking hell, I do, because if we don't do it, we're gonna. I have 10-year-old son, and I'm terrified what the world will be when he's my age, or well, when he's 20. So let's please think about why we do this thing, regardless if it's like designing and developing with data or without data. We need to think about these kind of wide consequences of our work. No, and that thing there is the least important of the things we should consider. That's money. You know, the planet doesn't care about our money. We need to think about, first of all, of course, individuals, because if you as an individual kind of, for example, express or get harmed, that doesn't, I mean, you can't justify things that way. Then you have to think about like what is the impact on the society of people, and that definitely is true like with many of the data-driven cases. There's like a lot of things you manipulate, you have these kind of consequences like that are on social level and that kind of slowly kind of seep in. And then you have the planet, and you have to now really start to think, what are the consequences of any project you do, small or large, to all of these realms? And I urge you to do that. And I also think it's really big challenge to do any of these things. So as both clients and providers of this work, think about it. And think if you want to be different, if you want to take the challenge and go away from this kind of, hey, let's optimize this a little bit more, let's be more efficient, let's get more money. Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kiitos.
I'm sure these ladies could have gone on for the whole day. I don't have any doubt about that. So thank you very much for Minna and Ulla for coming here and sharing your discussions. The unfortunate consequence of running over time means that there will be fewer time for audience questions, but I have to do some technical things here. So if there are any comments or questions to Minna, please voice them out. Raise your hands and shout out or do something like that. Anyone? I do have always one question in reserve. So I would like to ask Minna, how do you feel about the responsibilities of being a designer in this kind of upcoming 2020 age? Is it going to be less or more than what it used to be, for instance, being a digital designer?
I think it's going to be more shared. I think it's kind of like everybody's doing design and everybody's doing tech in these projects, and everybody should voice their concerns and carry their responsibility and be curious about the other kind of like, you know, designers should be more curious about certain aspects of tech and should really kind of as a part of the team take more responsibility. Yes, and of course, as part of the team, I think, but also as individuals, we all, and I really don't want to say designers, but you know, whatever you are when you are in the project, you also, like, you decide where the line goes. You decide when you feel uncomfortable, when you want to voice questions, when you want to say that, you know, I don't think that it should go this way, or hey, let's stop and investigate more. And I think it doesn't have anything to do with if you're a designer or not. Of course, designers are normally quite good facilitators and bring people together, so that's fine, but I wouldn't want to emphasize that.
Okay, thank you, Minna.